The prophet Jeremiah wrote down in the 14th chapter of his ledger a cold warning for a people who thought they could wander into the dark without a reckoning. Their driftings are many. They have sinned against the Lord. Thus says the Lord concerning this people, they have loved to wander. They have not restrained their feet. Therefore the Lord does not accept them. Now he will remember their iniquity and punish their sins. We like to believe that our choices disappear in the rearview mirror. We convince ourselves that if we drive fast enough, if we buy enough acres, if we bury our betrayals under 20 years of concrete and luxury real estate, the past will simply lose its fuel. But the universe doesn't operate on a curve. It runs on a ledger. A dark, unyielding cosmic ledger where the interest compiles in the shadows day after day, year after year, completely silent. And when the contract expires, the collection agent doesn't send a letter. He sends a machine and the sign of things to come. Welcome to this episode of The Lot, The Reunion. The cooling manifold of the Triumph TR7 gave off a sharp metallic ping into the damp air of the master bay, like an iron clock counting down in an empty room. The desaturated white light of a single shop lamp cut through the hanging fog, reflecting off the high-gloss, non-metallic, blood-red lacquer of the car's wedge-shaped nose. It was an aggressive, predatory silhouette. The factory called it the shape of things to come. Peter LeBlanc was aware of a presence, but did not look up from the workbench. He continued to run an oiled stone over a hardened valve shim with a rhythmic, scraping stroke that sounded like a blade crossing leather. 5 feet behind him, standing perfectly still where the concrete floor dissolved into the midnight dark of the open garage doors, was Vlad Tsepesh. He wore no performance armor. He wore a dark, unbranded wool topcoat that hung with the heavy, disciplined drape of a man who had seen not only many lands, but many ages. His face and features carried an ancient stillness of one who had watched languages die and empires turn to gravel. "What brings the son of the dragon to my sanctum?" Peter said with an unflinching smoothness, as the man known to the world as Dracula glided across the space that separated the two men. Vlad let out a short, dry laugh that carried the heavy, rhythmic cadence of his native Wallachian accent. "Pietro, you haven't aged a day, my friend," Vlad said, his voice flat, dropping into a low, gravelly rumble. "It has been a king's age, has it not?" Vlad stepped forward, his boots silent on the oil-stained concrete. His eyes caught the glare of the shop lamp, not with a cinematic flash, but with the dense, Solomonic weight of a ledger that had never missed an audit across the span of 800 years. He ran a pale, long-fingered hand along the sharp crease of the car's front bumper. Under his touch, the dark reflection in the red paint seemed to ripple, fluid and heavy, like oil shifting on water. His posture was smooth, feigning a friendly warmth that barely masked a terrifyingly dark resolve. Terrifyingly level resonance. "Count, I have to presume that this is not a social call," Peter confidently responded, his voice matching that of the Count with an equally smooth, terrifyingly level resonance, like that of an iron door dropping into a stone groove. "Or we would have had this conversation when we both had business in Genoa. If I recall, we still had some items left on the books that needed accounting, did we not?" Vlad pulled his designer sunglasses down. His spectral blue and green irises seemed to move in an ethereal dance, his mouth curling into the ghost of a cold, knowing grin that revealed the sharp points of 2 pearly white canines. 1979, Vlad said softly, the heavy Romanian accent thickening. A fascinating and anxious little sliver of time. The mortals are terrified of their own decay. It is true, I owe you a sum of your rightful harvest, my friend. I am in town with matters to attend, and I wish to strike a bargain with you. I will make good on my commitment of the 3 I promised you. Pietro, you would have had them already if those damnable peasants in robes, those parasitic priests, had not driven me away from my quarry. Peter exhaled a short, bored breath. Yes, yes, Vlad, we all have our crosses to bear. So what is it that I can do for you, and when can I expect you to balance your book with me? I have need of a vehicle to get me around. This one, perhaps, Vlad murmured, gesturing with a long, pale hand to the sharp wedge of the Triumph TR7. And if you will allow me, I will deliver unto you no less than 7 souls. But I am going to need a pittance of time. Let me have this brief handful of winters to gather what is due. Peter didn't blink, nor did he answer. From a dead-still seated position on his grease-stained stool, Peter exploded forward with a preternatural, blinding velocity that utterly defied the physical metrics of anything earthbound. Before the Prince of Darkness's supernatural reflexes could even trigger a defense, Peter's right hand shot out like an iron piston. His fingers locked around the Count's throat in a crushing, unyielding grip that instantly flattened the tailored wool of his topcoat. With a display of brute, primordial strength that completely dwarfed the power and speed of Dracula, Peter lifted the immortal entirely off his boots, driving his mass backward through the air and slamming him hard against the solid brick wall. The second Vlad's spine hit the masonry. A rogue wave of raw, violent energy surged through the building's infrastructure. Every single light bulb inside the sanctum, even the dead, unpowered tubes hanging from the ceiling rafters, suddenly filled with a blinding, oversaturated surge of white current. For suffocating heartbeats, the entire room was bathed in a terrifying, stadium-level glare that exposed every crack in the concrete and every line of unbalanced shock on the Count's face. Vlad's warrior instincts kicked in with a sudden, violent spasm. The Prince of Darkness did not panic. Peter's attack triggered the blood fury that had slaughtered armies across the Wallachian steppes. Reaching into the deep well of his immortal anatomy, his muscles engorged, his skin turning a mottled, translucent ash gray, as Dracula attempted to dissolve his physical mass into a swirling column of mist to slip through the fingers of the trap. It was to no avail. He didn't move an inch. Peter's grip seemed to close the very gap between the molecules that separated them, denying him the space he needed to change his form. Peter's grip remained an unyielding vice that clamped down on his throat like a hydraulic press. Vlad tried to shift his weight, his boots kicking uselessly against the masonry, his long, pale, claw-like fingers tearing at Peter's forearm with a strength that could rip steel doors off their hinges. He left no marks on the automotive curator. It was as though he was trying to scratch an anvil. Then Dracula opened his mouth, a low, wet hiss vibrating against his canines, trying to project a wave of paralyzing psychic dread straight into the mind of Peter. Peter smiled, entirely amused. All of his earthly, supernatural parlor tricks were meaningless inside the sanctum of the repair shop for Exodus Motors. When Peter spoke, his voice didn't rise to a shout. It carried a calm, crushing resonance. Stop struggling, Vlad. It's unseemly for a man who owns a castle. Peter increased the pressure. The sound of Vlad's cervical vertebrae groaning and beginning to give way under the pressure force echoed against the throat and spine. Peter's tone remained almost conversational, entirely bored. You have spent 500 years listening to the peasants scream your name in fear of the dark. You let a few court poets and a London novelist turn your bookkeeping errors into a legend, and now you walk into my sanctum, presuming upon my pliability. You think because I am a curator of automotive antiquity that I have forgotten the dawn of the celestial architecture? Peter leaned in closer. The cold, empty vacuum of his breath hit Vlad's ash-grey cheek. His voice dropped into a mocking, commanding stillness. Now listen closely to me, Impaler. I was one of the architects of that which you see in the night sky. I have watched continents drift and stars burn down to charcoal while waiting for the ledger to clear. I am a patient man, Count, but do not mistake that for weakness or for the tolerance of your arrogance. Do not ever mistake me for a merchant you can put off with a handful of winters. I am a lord of chaos. I watched the first morning fall from the heavens before your ancestors had learned how to sharpen a stick. You will adjust your posture in my presence. You will look upon this ground not with worship, because I have no use for the prayers of a debtor, but with absolute, unyielding reverence. By this time, the intensity of the light began to burn the flesh of the Transylvanian prince, growing hotter and brighter still, until in a sudden, blinding flash, the repair bay went completely dark. Peter let the silence hang in the dark for 3 beats, letting the weight of the admonition settle deep into the immortal's marrow. Now, Peter said softly, his voice dropping into a chilling, level stillness. We are going to open the ledger book again, and you are going to tell me exactly whose names are written on those 7 lines. With a casual, single-handed flick of his wrist, Peter released his grip and dropped the Prince of Darkness flat onto the oil-stained concrete floor like a discarded coat. The hyper-saturated California sun that had baked the dry hills of Walnut Creek all afternoon did not fade cleanly. It left behind a bruised, heavy, purple twilight over the canyon ridges of Las Lomas. Down the asphalt ribbon of the canyon road, the air hummed with the bass-heavy, synthetic pulse of Donna Summer drifting from outdoor speakers, mixed with the thick smell of tie sticks and cheap beer. Inside the packed suburban house graduation party, the celebration was loud, fluid, and mean. Charlie Montgomery, the local high school golden boy, recently crowned prom king and captain of the varsity football team, marched out onto the front lawn of Karen McDougal's parents' house with the untouchable swagger of a boy who had not yet been broken by the world. He gripped his plastic solo cup as if it were a jewel-encrusted chalice, gesturing toward the midnight blue '78 Camaro gleaming at the curb, as though it were a chariot forged by the gods. Clara Vance walked away from the noise. Her throat was tight, choked by a raw combination of disbelief and humiliation. 10 minutes ago, she had slipped down a back hallway to find him in the house. And find him she did. Charlie's varsity jacket was draped over the shoulders of her best friend on the cheerleading squad, Karen. Charlie's arms around her friend, his lips locking Karen's. Clara exploded, slapping him across the face and tearfully condemning her once trusted best friend. Karen shrugged. I'm sorry, Claire. It just happened. You're being dramatic, Clara. It didn't mean anything. And she came after me. Look, we've all been drinking. It's no big deal. Charlie didn't apologize. He simply smiled with that dismissive, wealthy, privileged smile that had protected him his entire life. Clara turned away in too much pain to stay. She wanted to leave. But her friends wouldn't leave the keg. Nobody would look her in the eye, and there was nobody to drive her home. So now, Clara walked alone along the unlit dirt shoulder of Crow Canyon Road, her cheerleading skirt shifting in the rising midnight breeze. Tears of pure fury dried cold on her cheeks. She spoke to the dark air, her voice a sharp, bitter rasp. I will never forgive him. I'll never forgive a single one of them if I live to be 500 years old. Then a narrow, unmarked shortcut, a ribbon of fresh, pitch-black, single, one-way road, appeared out of nowhere. She desperately wanted to find the comforting arms of the whoopee her grandmother had made and bury her face in its faded flannel. So she turned off the main canyon road, looking for the quickest way home. The silence of the ravine seemed to swallow the sound of her footsteps and sobs, as her mind drifted back to her own kitchen 2 weeks prior. Remembering the sound of her father's leather suitcases snapping shut, the front door closing, and the silhouette of her mother sitting in the dark with a glass of scotch. "Mom, where is Dad going? He's not really leaving, is he?" Clara asked in almost hysterical panic. Her mother's response still echoed in her ears like a permanent poison. "Men don't love, Clara. They lease. The second your skin loses its tightness, they go shopping. Get used to the cold," her mother slurred. Clara's attention was pulled out of that painful memory when, as if out of nowhere, a thick wall of coastal fog rolled over the ridge, wiping out the stars and making the path hard to see. Then came the sound. It was the distinct mechanical hum of a fine-tuned inline-4 engine, settling into an easy, rhythmic purr as it came up the steep grade behind her. The blood-red 1979 Triumph TR7 Coupe swept smoothly out of the mist, its non-metallic paint appearing rich and deeply comforting under the moonlight. The car glided gently onto the dirt shoulder next to her, its pop-up headlights lifting in a smooth, quiet synchronization to cast a soft, warm, amber glow along the asphalt, effortlessly pushing back the chill of the canyon fog. The passenger door lock clicked, and the door gently swung open. A very handsome young man, appearing to be in his early 20s, sat behind the wheel, his silhouette perfectly still against the seat. His eyes carried a warm, almost orange glimmer, and the stillness of his voice cut through the damp air with the calm of a sanctuary amid the storm. "Miss, this is no night to be walking alone in the dark," the young man said softly. "Let me take you where your heart desires to go. Come now. You will see the path is not as narrow as it looks, young lady. Come see." Clara stopped, her fingers instinctively gripping the gold cross necklace her father had given her. But the emotional vacuum under her roof had left her completely unarmored. Transfixed by the calm gravity of his gaze, she leaned into the open frame of the car door. And there Clara stands, at the precipice of a wide and welcoming road, her fingers wrapped around a gold cross that cannot protect a heart already given over to revenge. She thinks this man is offering sanctuary, something to shield her from the canyon fog and the pain of life's cruelties. She doesn't understand the seal she is about to break. No, Clara only hears a handsome voice promising options, promising room to wander. And people never realize, do they? Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. "Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." Fools they are who walk this broad road, as it is paved entirely with uncollateralized debts. Charles Montgomery will spend the next 20 years accumulating his luxury real estate and his gold Rolexes, entirely oblivious to the fact that his high school graduation night signature has already been entered into the ledger. He thinks the past is dead and buried, unaware that the interest on his sin has compounded in the shadows, and the bill is due. Join us next week for Chapter 2 of this little ledger. 2000, party over. Out of time. We will slide through time to see how Clara and the Prince of Darkness decide to party in 1999, and whether a 20-year high school reunion will end in the coronation of a new king and queen of the prom. Until then, remember, stay in the light or be swallowed by the darkness. This is The Lot, written and produced by Marcus Machado. Subscribe free at marcusmachado.substack.com.
To the great flame, they bared his heart. He watches and waits. He knew it would come, like the wind and the rain. Get on your knees and pray. On your knees and pray.